a lot of words will be spoken over the next few days, but given the theme of this meeting, a new beginning, given the connections that we have with our peatlands, the rich cultural and archaeological heritage, that space between worlds that they've represented for millennia, I've been inspired to read some words from the master of poetry, Seamus, who is widely recognized as one of the major poets of the 20th century and is still with us in spirit in this century. Seamus wrote prolifically and with great depth of understanding about his own connection with peatlands. Another Seamus might have preferred if I read from the poem Balderrick, but the poem that really stood out for me in the context of this event is his poem Kinship. I'm going to read a few lines to set us up and remind us of our own kinship and our community together, but also the kinship with the land that connects us. So just a few lines from Seamus. The bog floor shakes, water cheeps and lisps as I walk down rushes and heather. I love this turf face, its black incisions, the coop's secrets of process and ritual. I love the spring off the ground, each bank a gallows drop, each open pool, the unstopped mouth of an urn, a moon drinker, not to be sounded by the naked eye. Quagmire, swampland, morass, the slime kingdoms, domains of the cold-blooded, of mud pads and dirtied eggs. But bog, meaning soft, the fall of windless rain, pupil of amber, ruminant ground, digestion of mollusk and seed pod, deep pollen bin, earth pantry, bone vault, sun bank, embalmer of votive goods and sabred fugitives. Insatiable bride, sword swallower, casket midden, flow of history, ground that will strip its dark side, nesting ground, outback of my mind. So with those words in mind, we'll be hearing a lot about biodiversity. We'll be hearing a lot about the water moving to the bog, the carbon, and all of these really valuable things. And I suppose to steal two more lines from him within this poem, where he says, I stand at the edge of centuries facing a goddess. So that's us today. We know a lot about peatlands. We have a lot more to learn. We're here to share knowledge. And yes, we face into the future together. So with that, I'm going to welcome Minister Malcolm Noonan, our Minister of State at the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, to officially launch our event. So welcome, Malcolm.
Good morning, Catherine, and Boland, Fodges, the Corner Cockania, sure, and you. Thanks, Catherine. It's a great privilege to be here with you this morning. That was a really beautiful way to start the event this morning. And I was really delighted to receive an invitation to address the Peatlands Gathering and to congratulate you all on this first gathering, a unique platform to promote a healthy exchange of dialogue and ideas regarding our peatlands in Ireland. Peatlands play a significant role in the natural and cultural heritage of Ireland, and this gathering will allow us to cultivate a new beginning for peatlands and to share knowledge and understanding. In this era of hosting virtual events, I believe that we've been given a great opportunity to reach a much wider audience of all interested parties to discuss the remarkable work being done on our peatlands and to strive towards a shared plan for their future. Having said that, it would be fantastic to be out on the bogs today. But I look forward to seeing the key messages from this gathering being brought forward to the UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, which I hope to attend in November this year. Later today, I'll be recording our contribution to COP15 in Kunming in China. And again, our ambition, as we spoke yesterday in Luxembourg on biodiversity, I think, and mentioning and referencing the importance of our peatlands will be critical to Ireland's story in contributing towards that. I'm delighted to see the archaeological heritage of our Irish peatlands also take a prominent place over the course of this event. 30 years of state-funded archaeological survey of Boland's industrial land holding has led to recording of thousands of monuments of wood and stone in our raised bogs. Many of these fascinating sites have been investigated through excavations funded by our department and by Board na Móna, available to researchers in our National Monument Service archive. The Instar Plus Archaeological Research Programme, which I recently announced, will offer an opportunity for the synthesis of this information to place wetland archaeology so long at the margins of archaeological discourse in Ireland centre stage. While there have been challenges in managing impacts on vulnerable material, the Boland Enhanced Decommissioning, Rehabilitation and Restoration Scheme will provide an unparalleled opportunity to preserve our peatland heritage into the future and also contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Ireland's programme for government commits to achieving net zero emissions by 2050, and this will involve policies and measures for decarbonisation in each sector of our economy and our society. Great work has been done over the years by a number of different actors, National Parks and Wildlife Service of my department, by state agencies, environmental organisations, and through community and volunteer efforts to restore degraded peatlands in Ireland. I'm delighted that we can share our experiences, research and lessons learned in a gathering such as this. The National Parks and Wildlife Service of my department are partners in a number of significant peatland projects, including the Interreg Care Peat project, where enhanced rehabilitation techniques were undertaken, and also in the EU Life Integrated Peatlands and People project with Boland, EPA, National University of Ireland Galway, and private consultancy Éireann, where over 2,900 hectares of raised bogs will be restored by MPWS and 7,000 hectares by Boland. The Wild Atlantic Nature Life Integrated project is well underway now and will tackle a spectrum of issues in relation to Western blanket bogs, but particularly will be engaging with local communities to find common ground for protecting and promoting our upland peatlands, which are so important in the European context. And I received a briefing from that yesterday, and Derek, I have to say it's really shaping up to be a really wonderful project. The EU Life Raised Bog project, the Living Bog, is also near completion and has been successful not just in peatland restoration measures, but in engaging local communities in conservation efforts and providing ancillary socioeconomic benefits for the project areas. We should all be encouraged by events such as the Peatlands Gathering to show us the extent of peatland projects, research, community engagement, and practical restoration and rehabilitation measures currently underway. It allows scientists, conservation practitioners, local stakeholders, NGOs, government departments, and all other interested parties to explore how the peatlands of Ireland and all those involved in their management and conservation should proceed, especially during the current climate and biodiversity challenges that we face. Knowledge gained here in Ireland can be replicated across Europe, just as we have learned from our European and international counterparts. Today, through study, research, and land management experience, we have a better understanding of the longer-term benefits that our peatlands can provide to society as a whole, particularly in terms of assisting our common responsibilities in reducing and in the future, hopefully preventing the release of carbon emissions into our atmosphere. This transformative process towards a decarbonised future has been and will be a challenging one, but with events like the Peatlands Gathering showing a mutual ambition for success in these challenges, I do believe it is an achievable one. Nature provides many values that go beyond the obvious services that it provides. Habitats such as peatlands are carbon-rich systems and are vital, superpowered ecosystems if they can be returned to a natural state. In the midst of this biodiversity and climate crisis, nature, whilst being the core part of the solution, also needs a helping hand from humanity if we are to reverse the impacts we have had over the last century. By restoring and revitalising peatlands, we can bring a range of benefits to people and the environment. Peatland protection and restoration can be a low-cost, low-tech and high-impact nature-based solution for both climate action and for biodiversity. Restoring these degraded landscapes should inspire people to re-engage with rich, diverse habitats, can support jobs with purpose and restore and protect our biodiversity. Only with healthy ecosystems can we enhance people's livelihoods, counteract climate change, and halt the collapse of biodiversity. It is important to achieve a fine balance between ecology, culture, and economy for the benefit of wider society. In line with our shared global responsibilities and goals, it is vital that we conserve and restore our natural ecosystems in a partnership model, adopting a strategic approach, policy approach across areas while considering all viewpoints. We live in a world that is interconnected. Our landscape is a dynamic place. Water and peat, soil and air, flora and fauna, people, and culture are all interrelated. Our oldest stories and richest tales were taken from our ancient landscapes, when the forests were tall and expansive and our peatlands were deep, sodden, and intact. Government policies also now strive to be interconnected, aligning with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Climate and biodiversity, heritage, just transition, and rural regeneration are all dependent on our finite land resources. When pressure is placed on one aspect of this interconnectivity, it can impact elsewhere. Where synergies are not there, there's a need to restore the balance and find a compromise between ecology and economy. The journey to protect our natural and cultural heritage has historically resulted in the development of a range of, at times, opposing viewpoints, but I believe we have reached a stage where agreements can be made and common ground found, and an initiative like the Peatlands Gathering can help us find the path that we need to take to find a permanent and satisfactory solution for all stakeholders. From the experience of my department, we know it is crucial that government helps and supports projects, plans, and all endeavours that help to achieve positive climate change and nature conservation results. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to those who are working in mutual cooperation towards turning the course of how this sector of our natural heritage is managed for our mutual benefit. During the course of the gathering, I look forward to learning more about the variety of peatland-related initiatives currently being developed and implemented. I hope to stay with you for some part of the sessions today, but I want to wish everyone all the very best. Thank Catherine for the invitation, and again, to thank you all for your collective work. It is really an exciting time, I believe, for nature in Ireland as we lead this whole challenging path through a much more sustainable future. Thank you all, and I look forward to the interactions today.
Thank you, Malcolm. That was absolutely inspiring, and I think you hit the nail on the head for a lot of us, and a lot of those thoughts resonate with everyone on the line today. I hope you can stay with us for a while, and please, we understand you have a really busy schedule, just like ourselves. If I can get my mouth working properly, I'll be doing fine. So without further ado, Malcolm, you can sit back and relax and turn off your video, and I'm going to open the first session of today. So I am the chair of the session, along with my friend and colleague, David Fallon. So David will be taking notes, but our first speaker this morning is Dianna Kopansky, and she is going to introduce the work of the Global Peatlands Initiative. So we're going to get a global perspective. So Dianna, can I call on you, please?
Thanks so much. I hope that you can see me and hear me well.
Yes, very well.
Wonderful. I would just first love to appreciate Honourable Minister Noonan's inspiring intervention, and also really congratulate you and your people for really taking on this challenge of going in the right direction and moving on a pathway that has multiple benefits and really a positive future. So thanks so much for that. And I also wanted to share my deep thanks for our leader and activator, Farrell. You're really an inspiration. So it's really a pleasure to be here with you today. My name's Dianna Kopansky. I'm coming from Nairobi, Kenya, for this really important gathering. And I have the honor on behalf of the United Nations Environment Program to lead the Global Peatlands Initiative. It's an initiative that's working hard as an international partnership to save peatlands as the world's largest terrestrial organic carbon stock. Many of you realize that peatlands matter for the climate. Peatlands cover just 3% of the global land surface area, yet they store the same amount of carbon that's contained in all terrestrial biomass and twice as much as in all the world's forests. Degradation through the conservation and drainage has affected nearly 15% of peatlands globally, and these degraded peatlands, covering just 0.4% of global land area, contribute as much as 5 to 6% of global human-caused greenhouse gas emissions annually. And when they are on fire, as they have been, that can double. So honestly, if the world has any hope of keeping our global average temperature increase to under 2 degrees, then urgent action must be taken to keep peatlands locked in the ground. At the same time, we need to already work on those drained peatlands, damaged peatlands, and to work together to help them to be rewilded, reclaiming them through wetting and restoration action, which will halt any further emissions into the atmosphere. Peatlands matter for people. This is a group of Mongolian herders, and they're suffering from their peatlands loss. 60% of the peatlands in their country have been drained and degraded and impacted by climate change. And we also know that peatlands house rare and unique biodiversity. They're important for the water regime, quality and regulation. And in Lima, Peru, pretty much their entire water source is actually taken care of from a highland peatland. So options to tackle peatlands degradation through restoration change, and they vary across the world. And we need to be adaptive and also take solutions that connect people to their place, respecting their cultural heritage, and also taking on the science and innovations that we have at our fingertips. Peatlands also matter for the planet. This is a picture that was shared to me from NASA, from Roberta Bondar, actually, who's a Canadian astronaut, who's very passionate about the environment and connecting up places. And peatlands do connect the world. Northern peatlands host migratory species, and close to 170 countries have peatlands. We're really only starting to understand the water cycle, especially as this global water cycling and climate change links, and how we can actually take action in our efforts to fight the nature and climate emergencies. Success for the climate and planet and people on a global scale, we know, requires global action. And the Global Peatlands Initiative is the partnership that I have the honor to lead. We're working really hard in our different areas of expertise to bring the best science and approaches to policy and the best innovations to financing. We're now 46 international partner organizations strong. Our last member joined yesterday is DEFRA, and so we are diverse. We cover also countries like the Congo, Indonesia, Peru, Chile, Canada, and it's really important that we, like you're doing these next days and have been doing through this year, connect up. We help to connect practitioners, scientists, investors, and policymakers. And we do this through South-South peer-to-peer exchange, as well as triangular collaboration. We're really all about fostering new collaboration, new partnerships without territoriality, but with collaboration and ambition. We're making progress, as the world signaled in 2019, when all countries of the world were together at the United Nations Environment Assembly and called for action toward the conservation and sustainable management of peatlands worldwide on a global resolution. So we are making an impact. We also have the impact and opportunity in front of us of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. It was launched this year as a rallying call to action for people, nature, and climate. It's a global movement, and we clearly need to already halt and stop and protect the precious nature we have left. But we also know that the pace of biodiversity loss is so rapid that we as people must take action beyond conservation, and restoration action, especially for peatlands, is critical to help nature recover and stop emissions, stop the loss, which will really only exceed if everyone plays their own part.
Dianna, you have 2 minutes remaining.
Thanks so much. The next 10 years is critical for the fight against climate and nature emergency. It's really our chance to highlight choices that people and policymakers can make. We need to protect our irrecoverable carbon, that's found on all 7 continents, and a great deal of that in peatlands. The carbon that's locked in there is equivalent to 20 years of fossil fuel emissions at current rates, and we really can't afford for those peatlands and those irrecoverable carbon stores to be degraded. The global aims of restoration action are clear: from climate adaptation, health, and economy. It's all connected, and working together for the protection and restoration of ecosystems is going to help us all achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, including ending poverty and hunger. We need $1 trillion to do that, and it's possible because within that are an estimated cost of just $7 billion per year for peatlands restoration. But restoration action makes economic sense, because $1 invested in restoration can generate up to $30 in economic benefits. We need to increase the amount of finance available for restoration as a solution, not only for building back better post-COVID, but to develop and create meaningful and green jobs. Nature's in crisis. We know that the benefits of intact peatlands far outweigh their importance for fuel and food security. Land that peatlands fall on is just a fraction and a small sacrifice, in my opinion, to pay for the immense benefits that they provide. So as we push the world to move away from the use of coal for fuel, we also need to move away from damaging and polluting agricultural practices. We need to work together and share our knowledge and ways of working so that we can develop models and systems that are supportive to move quickly and swiftly toward ecosystem ready and appropriate actions. Everyone has a role to play. We hope that you're ready. The time is now. The Global Peatlands Initiative and the UN Decade is a real opportunity for us to be the first generation to leave the earth for our children and future generations in better health than we received it. Thanks so much. Be part of the solution. Join us, because peatlands matter. We need all hands on deck for people, the planet, and we're really delighted that the Peatlands Gathering in Ireland is going to be offering your solutions and your knowledge into the Peatlands Pavilion and also into the Global Peatlands Initiative. It's really important. You have so much to share. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dianna. Thank you so much for putting Irish peatlands in the perspective of the global context. We know we are a hotspot, and we know that we need to play our part. And we will be hearing from Shane McGuinness later today, who will be talking about financing restoration, because it's a key challenge for us to get that. So just to remind everyone, you'll be getting a reminder, a naughty reminder, when you're going a little bit over time, because they are quite quick fire talks. And our next speaker up is Seamus Boland, and Seamus is from Irish Rural Link, a true bogman, chairperson of the Peatlands Council, and I've had the honour of spending time with him over the last few years in the Community Wetlands Forum. Seamus, over to you.
Catherine, thank you very much for having me here, and I'd like to thank the Minister for his words, and indeed, Dianna, your talk was really, really inspiring. Look, my hats are many, but really, as Catherine says, I'm a very proud bogman, born near Clara Bog, and Clara Bog is, as you know, a major entity in terms of indeed world peatland, and indeed has been recognized by many across the world in that sense. My hats this morning are primarily Irish Rural Link, yes, the chairperson of the Peatlands Council. And let me start with the Irish Rural Link interest in this. You mentioned Shane McGuinness, who will be speaking later. Shane is the Development Officer on the Wetlands Forum. This is a project we set up through Irish Rural Link a few years ago, when in the middle of the turf cutting contract controversy, it was agreed by many people that we should turn what became a very great negative. In other words, peatlands were seen, unless they could produce peat for commercial production, they were a negative and therefore were a waste. We believe that is not the case. They're actually an asset in the community. So when Dianna, you mentioned the various stakeholders that should be part of any peatland discussion, we have primarily said it must be the communities who live in the area of the peatland, because these communities need to own those wetland and peatland areas, and therefore by owning them, they will make sure that not alone are they protected, but that the opportunities that they can give in an area are maximized to the full. And I think the Wetlands Forum, if you look it up through the Wetlands Forum website, or indeed Irish Rural Link, you will get a great picture and the work that Shane is doing as well. So I just need to highlight that. We've a few innovative programs like Farm Peat, which have been started again, part of our, I suppose, aim and objective, which is really to say to everybody that peatland and wetlands are actually an asset, and local people, especially farmers, can benefit from those wetlands and peatlands in their area. And the Farm Peat project seeks to bring a partnership between local farmers whose land adjoins the peatland area, and who can work in partnership, as the Minister said, with the various agencies responsible for peatland, so that we can ensure that the work done by farmers complements the peatlands growth, and that we don't endanger either farming or peatlands by simply living together. I mentioned those because in terms of information, I would ask you to look up those projects, because they're real projects, and I think we have got to get very practical. In terms of the peatland strategy, I know Suzanne Nally is there as well, and she may talk more about that. But the peatland strategy, which is part of the Peatlands Council work, seeks to bring together the various strands that again work on the peatlands area, whether it's farmers, NGOs, turf cutters, all of that. And it seeks to bring a vision to ensuring that the peatlands in Ireland are protected from now on. We still have 10% of the original peatlands intact. Admittedly, that's a huge drop from something like 20% many years ago. But we still have one of the largest areas in terms of population and geographic size of peatlands in Ireland. So I think it is absolutely incumbent on us to ensure that, as I said, the peatlands are turned into an asset in terms of perception and in terms of practice. Going back to my work in Clara, it came to being, and some of you will be sick of this story, but it's nonetheless worth repeating. Farmers and tenants who used and cut turf in Ireland, and there's still a lot of turf cutting, I would say too much, did so because they needed it as fuel. It is still the cheapest fuel, and many households are managed in such a way that they depend on that fuel. So for many farmers, the reality of ceasing turf cutting had a major financial hit on them, and therefore they needed some help. I noticed in our attendance here this morning, Andrew Jackson, myself and Andrew Jackson many years ago worked on a program which we said, if you can heat the houses in Ireland, especially rural Ireland, by other methods, passive air or other green and non-carbon methods, we should do so. So it means retrofit, it means making sure all new buildings are built with that will not be using peat, for example. We would still say that there's been a lot of progress made in this area, but at the very beginning of the turf cutting, I suppose that part of the conservation area was forgotten or left out. And in leaving it out, we caused ourselves a lot of controversy trying to implement the SAC directive, the European Directive of Peatlands. And I think we should remember that in the words of former President Robinson of Ireland, just transition means just transition. It means making sure that all of the various stakeholders, farmers, tenants, turf cutters, NGOs are in the same page and are working together, which is the strength of the Peatlands Council in which I chair. So I will say this, Catherine, I welcome this initiative, the Peatlands Gathering. As you know, we were on Clara Bog last week. Some of you maybe were there as well. So as the Minister said, we had a great experience of actually being out on the bog. But the bog has lost a lot of its original strength, and our job is to protect it. But equally, that has to be applied to all of the peatlands still left in Ireland.
Seamus, there's 2 minutes remaining.
Okay. And I'll finish with this. What I would urge the Peatlands Gathering to consider, apart from going on the Irish Rural Link website and finding out more about this, what I would ask you to consider that all work is done in partnership, that we ensure nobody in that famous statement is left behind, and that we engage in all of the actors, in all of those who live beside bogs, to get into the space where Abbey Leaks, a very famous bog in Ireland, have managed to have a situation where the community really owns the local wetland and peatland. And that's my vision, and that's what I'd like to see. Thank you, Catherine, for having me, and all of you who have attended.
Thank you, Seamus. I think that's a really important point, that all work is done in partnership and no one is left behind. Because in my own community, on the road that I live, everyone is burning turf, and in the summertime, everyone is bringing it home. So how do we turn those houses around so that they can be more self-sufficient, either through solar panels or whatever? So we have to work on that piece as we work on the peatlands at the same time. I am now delighted to welcome my colleague, Suzanne Nally from the National Parks and Wildlife Service. So Suzanne, when you're ready, you can switch on, and if you can share your slides, that's fantastic.
Okay, can you see that there, Catherine?
Yeah, perfect, lovely.
Great. Okay, so thanks very much for the invitation today. I think it's a fantastic initiative. It's great to have so many, I suppose, interested parties in peatlands and stakeholders here in one forum. I'm hopeful that what will come out of this will, help, inform future policies as well. So it's a really important initiative. So thanks again. So I head up the Peatlands Conservation and Restoration section in National Parks and Wildlife Service, which is part of a government department that's tasked with managing Ireland's nature conservation responsibilities under national and international and European law. Today, I'm going to speak about the efforts underway to revive Ireland's raised bogs by National Parks and Wildlife Service in collaboration with others. Firstly, and I know I'm speaking to the converted here, but I wanted to remind ourselves how important Ireland's peatlands are. So like almost 20% of the national land area in Ireland is peatlands. This is made up of blanket and raised bogs and fens predominantly. So our raised bogs are mainly found in the Midlands region of this country and are over 10,000 years old. So Ireland has the highest proportion of the total EU resource of raised bogs at over 50%. So we do have a special responsibility for its conservation at an international level. The national raised bog resource, though, is in serious decline over the last 20, 30 years due to a variety of pressures and threats. And we currently have only about 50,000 hectares of intact high bog left. So to me, our bogs are like Ireland's Amazon, and Ireland has protected the best examples, about 9% of these bogs considered of high nature conservation value, by designating them as special areas of conservation and natural heritage areas. And you'll see some examples of these on your field trips. Today, we have 53 raised bog special areas of conservation and 76 NHAs, natural heritage areas, within this network. But with the NHA network due to undergo a new reconfiguration after years of scientific study. So as Seamus has said, our bogs are an intrinsic part of Ireland's identity and culture. As you cut through the layers of bog, it replicates Ireland's evolution in some respects, each layer unveiling another part of the history of our land. Is revealed bog bushers and chalices and bog men. The land has been cut by hand with the slán and then evolving to mechanism as our culture evolved. It has supported the development of industry and the creation of communities. When a bog is healthy though, it hosts, as Dianna has said, a range of benefits in terms of flora and fauna, biodiversity, water regulation and amenity value. So peatlands have an important role in greenhouse gas emissions as well, storing twice the amount of carbon of all the world's forests combined. It's estimated that over 10% of Ireland's emissions come from degraded peatlands, where the bog stops breeding, and this is when you start to lose those values. By conserving and restoring our bogs to healthy habitats, by re-wetting and blocking the drains, we can breathe life back into our bogs and lock that carbon in. It's part of the government policy on peatlands to revive our degraded raised bogs that are protected as NHAs and SACs for all the range of benefits that it brings to people and biodiversity and the environment. This is set down in numerous plans, the National Peatland Strategy, which is currently undergoing a review, and we hope, following an extensive public consultation, we hope to publish the outcome of that in the coming months. It's also set down in the Climate Action Plan, the Rural Regeneration Strategy, and National Raised Bog Special Areas Conservation Management Plan. The UN, in this UN Decade of Ecosystems Restoration, it really is a global call to repair our planet, and there's never been a more urgent time to revive our degraded ecosystems than now. The restoration works on our raised bogs are a key part of the Irish government's response to this movement. We restore the peatlands to an ecological balance system by re-wetting the bog through the insertion of peat dams in the drains, which encourages the growth of sphagnum mosses. We are undertaking enhanced restoration techniques through the use of cell and contour bunding, such as seen here at Cloncrow NHA in County Westmeath. The best practice for raised bog restoration is contained in the Irish Wildlife Manual, which National Parks and Wildlife Service published a number of years ago. So sphagnum mosses really is a superpower, and as it grows, it becomes the building blocks of peat and is able to host up to 20 times its weight in water. I find it fascinating that as part of World War I, a sphagnum depot was established at the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin, and the mosses were shipped overseas to be used as wound dressing. So really, huge amount of benefits to sphagnum mosses. National Parks and Wildlife Service have been restoring and conserving raised bogs over the last 30 years or so, with concerted efforts taking place, particularly since the publication of the National Peatland Strategy and the National Raised Bog Special Area Conservation Management Plan. In the last 3 years, since 2018, we've restored over 5,000 hectares, with plans to restore the remainder of the raised bog network of 22,000 hectares within the next 5 to 10 years. There's so many excellent examples of how national parks, state agencies like Bornamona, Quilcha, local community groups, Community Wetlands Forum, have come together and collaborated in protection of key natural heritage locations, as well as helping to meet natural conservation objectives. There's a vast array of projects underway in Ireland at with European and international partners, such as the EU Life Project, the Farm Peat, and the work of the Community Wetlands Forums, NGOs, communities and landowners. The output of many of these projects can inform future policy for Ireland bogs.
2 minutes remaining, Suzanne.
Okay. As I said, people are very strongly linked to their bogs and property rights, and the government recognises these rights. Restoration efforts in Ireland are done in consultation with landowners, and the state has put extensive resources for alternative options to turf cutting on our protected bogs, compensation land purchase schemes, and works in consultation with various representative groups and through the Peatlands Council. There's been an appreciation to balance the need of the conservation with the traditional rights in line with our legal obligations. To me, the local community and their landowners truly are the custodians of nature. Many local community groups have embraced the natural assets of raised bogs in the area. and fostered a community amenity which promotes a sense of place and well-being, particularly important during the times we're in now. The department's community engagement scheme has supported many local projects in peatlands areas, which allowed other initiatives from development walking trails and habitat surveys to capturing the oral history of our bogs. To conclude, there's been a lot done and more to do for Ireland's peatlands and raised bogs. By efforts to restore Ireland's raised bogs in collaboration with stakeholders, it can provide a nature-based solution to protect our fragile ecosystems for the benefit of people now and into the future and for biodiversity. Thanks very much, and I look forward to further discussion later today. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Suzanne. And I just love all those pictures of people getting out on site, and just to say well done to you, Suzanne, on all the work that you're doing, and I know that you'll be doing in the future in your role, present and future roles. So the next person I'd like to invite is John Connolly. So John is a colleague of mine from Trinity College, Dublin. He's based in the Department of Geography, and he is the main man when it comes to mapping peatlands in Ireland. So over to you, Johnny.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Great to be here at the Peatlands Gathering. So in today's presentation, we talk about mapping peatlands in Ireland and about how we've progressed mapping peatlands. So, well, peatlands have been mapped in Ireland for over 200 years, the first being the Bog Commissioner's maps from 1809 to 1814, a fantastic resource. Probably the most well-known map is Hammond's Peatland map from 1980s. In the Bogland project from 2006 to 2010, it was decided to update those peatland maps. The problem with the Bogland project, well, it was a strength of the Bogland project. It was very interdisciplinary, but that meant that everybody had a different understanding of what peat and peat soil and peatlands were. So we had to sit down in a meeting and hash out what the definitions of those things are, and this is what we came up with there. So once we had those definitions, then we can go out and start mapping the peatlands where they are. A map was produced in 2007. And this map was updated in 2009. This map, the 2009 map, showed that Irish peatland spatial extent was 1.4 million hectares, covers about 21% of Ireland, and has an overall accuracy, map accuracy of about 85%. So definitely room for improvement there. Once we knew where the peatlands were, we could start to investigate what was going on in those peatlands. So another step in that process is to look at mapping land use on the peatlands. This was done with work published in 2018 using medium resolution satellite imagery, 23 meter spatial resolution. And with these data, we could find 4 different types of land uses. So we had grassland, forest, industrial, peatlands, and then residual peat. And these residual peatlands are areas where there is wide-scale, small-scale degradation, but wasn't detectable at this spatial resolution. And what we found in that map is that 50,000 hectares were converted to industrial peatlands, about 340,000 hectares converted to forestry, and about 440,000 hectares converted to grassland. And these conversions started at different times in our history. Now we note that in this map, there's a significant area covered by cloud, and this needs updating. And luckily, I have a PhD student, Wahaj Habib, who is working on this process as we speak. So he's produced several maps using Google Earth Engine cloud-based platform to look at peatland land use over the entirety of Ireland. Here's some examples from the Midlands, some examples from Wicklow, and then there's the overall map. Now, this is preliminary data, but we'll be forming a manuscript out of this soon. We're also interested in a land use change. How did the peatlands change over time? So this is a very interesting little GIF from Bellacarrig. And what it shows is that in 2003, when peat mining stopped, you can see that the areas start to get redder. And this is the near infrared, so it represents green vegetation. So you can see there's a change from black to green. So there's a greening up of the peatlands. Very, very interesting. We're also interested in refining our information on the bogs. So another project on the Smart Bog project is detecting peatland drains. So the aim of this is to detect drain extent, drain condition, to integrate that information with greenhouse gas data to identify greenhouse gas hotspots, and then identify sites that are suitable for conservation, restoration, or rerouting. And in this particular project, we have up to 7,000 square kilometers of very high resolution aerial imagery. So we're using automated machine learning algorithms to assess that data. Another element is of refining this information is using UAVs, unmanned or unoccupied aerial vehicles, apologies. And this is a project that is being conducted by my PhD student, Charmaine Cruz. This is a Liffey Head bog up here on the left, and it's producing very, very high resolution imagery. And we're testing how habitat mapping can be conducted using these data. Another element of mapping peatlands in Ireland is trying to assess the peatland carbon store in blanket bogs in particular. So we did some work in 2011 that looked at the peatland carbon pool in the Wicklow Mountains. This work has been in the process of being updated to look at blanket bogs nationally. They're a very, very important resource, natural resource. They haven't been studied in great extent. Blanket bogs cover about 14.5% of the landscape, and they're about 70% of the total peatland area. And the preliminary estimate from this work is that the blanket bogs store about 1,200 megatons of carbon, huge amounts. Just a quick mention here that the Lugalaw Estate in Wicklow is conducting a big blanket bog restoration project. We will have a video up from them later on in the conference, and on my field trip on Saturday, I'll be discussing a little bit more about that.
2 minutes remaining, John.
Okay, great. So I'm glad that Suzanne brought up the Amazon, because when we're looking at peatlands, when we compare them to somewhere like the Amazon, we can see the Amazon here on the left stores between the soil and the vegetation stores just under 300 megatons of carbon. If we look at a peatland ecosystem in the Amazon, we can see that the vegetation stays about the same, about 150 megatons of carbon, and the below ground storage in the soil is about 350. Now, if we take this kind of model and apply it to Ireland, we can see that in the Wicklow peatlands and the deep peats, we have up to 870 tons of carbon per hectare. And if you extend this out to the much deeper peatlands, it's much, much higher, up to 3,300 tons per hectare. So the vegetation, while it's important, if you're looking at the carbon stock, it's what's stored in the ground that's important. We have a couple of new projects that are just starting up at the moment. One is the REPEAT project that's funded by DAFN and EPA, where we're taking the bog commissioners maps that I mentioned earlier, and they're quite accurate maps, and we're using them to look at land use change over the last 200 years. We have a PhD and a postdoc post available on that. A second project that we're looking for a postdoc for is the Irish Peatland Resilience Project. This is just starting up, so we're also looking for staff for that. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and that's me done.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, John. And I think you really highlighted the role of research in terms of informing a lot of the issues around peatlands, and the great work supported by the likes of the EPA and DAFM, the department, and their research. And the thing about it is, if we don't know where the peatlands are, how can we tell how much carbon is there if we don't know the peat depths? And I know that Florence and David Wilson have been working on trying to develop a rudimentary peat map of Ireland in terms of depth. So it's really important. Something a little bit different now, and I'm going to call on our colleague Kathy Moore, who's an archaeologist, and it's a joint presentation between Kathy and Ellen O'Carroll, and they're going to tell us about Irish peatland archaeology, past, present and future. So Kathy, are you ready to go?
I am, yeah, I hope so. That is that good?
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're good. Okay, so good morning, everybody. This paper will focus on the archaeology of raised bogs, in particular industrial raised bogs, as these have been the focus of archaeological investigation for several decades. This is a pivotal time for Irish peatlands and a critical point at which we discuss the archaeology of raised bogs. As we all know, peat extraction in state-owned industrial bogs has ceased, and a programme of restoration and new development is beginning. So it's time to take stock of what we know and form a strategy for the future. We're going to take a very brief introduction to Irish archaeology, or the archaeology of Irish raised bogs. Then we're going to look at the 2013 Peatland Review. And then finally, we'll look to the future and what we believe needs to happen. So here we have a range of site types that have been found in industrial raised bogs over the last 30 years during campaigns of survey and excavation. It's important to note that these are not all typical, but they do reflect the rich range of sites and activities that took place in bogs in the past. These sites are representative of occupation, of activities like hunting, of communications and travel, and of ritual life. So clockwise from the top left, we have a Neolithic stone hut in Ballydangan, County Offaly, close to a former lake edge and probably used as a hunting hide. Beside that, then, Clonfinlock, County Offaly, a late Bronze Age palisaded settlement in which there were a number of roundhouses. The Great Iron Age Road at Corlay, County Longford, built in 148 BC, and the only prehistoric Irish tower to have a dedicated museum. Below that, then, something much simpler, a row of small wooden stakes, perhaps marking a boundary or safe route across the bog. Bog bodies, then, with which everyone is fascinated, people who clearly suffered ritualized deaths, victims of human sacrifice, and evidence of the spiritual role of bogs. I should also say, of course, that the sites and the bogs themselves are repositories of the paleo environment, pollen grains, volcanic glass, insects, wood, all providing detailed insight into the past environment and human interaction with the same. In addition to sites, thousands of artifacts have been found in our raised bogs. Many are items which do not survive in dryland conditions and so offer glimpses into otherwise hidden aspects of past life. They range from the mundane to the exquisite. And while finds like Bronze Age gold capture the imagination on the headlines, more low-key objects such as a lost leather shoe are rare fragments of everyday life. So again, clockwise from the top left, we have the Dowris hoard, a huge hoard of 200 bronze objects, including weapons, instruments, and tools. Beside that, then, a medieval leather shoe found on a trackway in Lamonaghan, County Offaly. A collection of stone tools, below which is the Eatercloon block wheel, a late Bronze Age wheel from Eatercloon, County Longford. And below that again, also from Eatercloon, is an Iron Age spear. Beside that, we have the beautiful Tubberdale yoke, again from Ballybeg, County Offaly, and dated to the late Bronze Age. And beside that is an exquisite Iron Age bog butter from Rossberry in County Kildare. The two coins are actually two of 14 13th century coins, which were found by Ellen in the 1990s in Corhill in County Offaly. And then finally, in the centre, we have two gold armlets from Darren Boy at County Offaly. So looking now at the Peatland Review, which is the 2013 review of archaeological survey and mitigation policy in relation to Boland peatlands since 1990. So in the past, archaeological work in raised bogs has largely been concentrated in state-owned industrial peatlands. Occasional additional excavations for research projects or in advance of development, such as mines or roads or wind farms, have also taken place. This data comes from the Peatland Review. So carried out or published in 2013, at that point, 64,000 hectares of raised bogs have been surveyed by archaeologists between 1990 and 2011. And these surveys had identified nearly 4,500 sites. Although trackways are certainly the best known site type from our raised bogs, the most common site type identified by archaeologists were archaeological deposits of archaeological wood, so small unstructured deposits of wood. These were followed by a site called tertiary towers, which are short trackways of up to 15 meters as a maximum. Importantly, the surveys that were carried out also recorded the category of threat at the time of record, and that ranged from destroyed to being destroyed, imminent danger, and threatened. Now, mitigation work, that is excavation completed after the survey, was almost entirely funded by Board Namona and saw about 350 of the 4,500 sites targeted for excavation between 1991 and 2011. Since then, we understand that an additional 52 sites have been subject to excavation, so about 400 out of the 4,500. Now, the level of resolution, that is the amount of the site that was archaeologically excavated, was typically low. Smaller sites were often resolved to over 50%, but larger sites were resolved to typically less than 10%. So, for example, a trackway of several hundred meters might have only had 10% archaeologically excavated. More recent excavations, again, we understand have had a slightly higher level of resolution, but that relates only to 52 sites. So based on the numbers, we know that we lost thousands of archaeological sites to the machines and the power stations. Since the review survey has largely ceased, there have been occasional single bog surveys commissioned by National Monuments and some reassessment surveys commissioned by Boland in 2013, but there has been no systematic survey between the end of the state survey and the Boland cessation of peat harvesting in 2019. So what's really important to remember here is that a survey of industrial bog is a single snapshot in time. When an additional 10 centimeters of peat is removed, it exposes a new chronological and archaeological horizon. So the survey of an industrial working bog is never finished, and we lost a decade when extraction continued without any archaeological presence. So we have no data on what survives. As raised bogs enter a new era of use, some work, such as wind farms, will fall under planning regulations, and so will be subject to archaeological conditions. However, restoration and re-wetting works, which have already commenced, do not have any archaeological planning conditions attached. And it's not enough to say that the sites will be preserved just because the bogs are being re-wetted. For starters, we don't even know what sites exist anymore, but more significantly with regard to re-wetting and restoration, similar work in the UK, in particular at Flag Fen, has demonstrated that re-wetting exposed sites, or those which have been subject to drainage previously, does not immediately save them.
2 minutes remaining, Kathy.
Thank you. However, it's not all about Boland. There are thousands of hectares of Irish raised bog owned by private peat extraction companies. And what do we know about the archaeology of these? Well, the answer is practically nothing. Under the Planning and Development Act 2000, under exempted developments, peat extraction in a new or extended area of less than 10 hectares is exempt, and peat extraction in a new or extended area of 10 hectares or more, where drainage of the bogland commenced prior to the coming into force of the regulations, is also exempt. So that means if the bog was opened in any way before 2011, it is exempt from planning. So there's no archaeological conditions imposed on these companies. I should point out that there are cases where the exemptions do not apply, and the exemption is removed if the development impacts on an archaeological site listed in the RMP. However, in the complete absence of prior planning conditions, there has been almost no survey of non-Board bogs, therefore they contain very few RMPs. In effect, if you don't look for the sites, they don't exist. A high-profile example of this will be the bog where Old Croghan Man was found. This has been surveyed just once since his discovery, and the bog had just been opened, and it has not been surveyed since, but peat extraction continues. The volume of archaeological sites and artifacts from Irish peatlands is unparalleled, or perhaps I should say it was unparalleled. And frankly, it's difficult to find a parallel for the level of destruction that occurred without any or adequate archaeological oversight. The destruction of archaeology in Irish peatlands has been completely anomalous to almost every single aspect of Irish archaeological practice. No other development on this scale falls outside planning and fails to have archaeological conditions. Ireland should be a world leader in peatland archaeology, but sadly we are far from it, and we say that as practitioners. We are in an emergency situation. We have been in an emergency situation for 20 years. We need to quantify the remaining archaeological sites and develop a mitigation strategy. Now that might include a range of approaches such as excavation or active preservation in situ, but the key thing is that we need a comprehensive strategy and it needs to be applied ASAP. This is the last chance for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And I think that's a real call to action. And I think a lot of people on this call, well, that's the first time they're maybe hearing this really serious issue. So we have 12 minutes, and I'd like our panelists from this morning. So Dianna, Seamus, Suzanne, John, Ellen, if you want to turn on your camera as well. And if the minister is still here, I'm not sure, because I was deeply involved in that presentation. So I'm really glad to have possibly Dianna, John, and Seamus might have had to leave. And so we have some questions. So I would just like to remind our audience that you can type questions into the Q&A, and that's how we will be fielding the questions. I've had a look through the questions myself, and I feel there's a really rich repository there. Obviously, people with lots of questions and issues, and I think it really comes down to this, question of clearly we need to work with our peatlands. Okay, so clearly we need to restore, as was highlighted. We need to work with communities. So I think trying to distill all those questions into one, how do we prioritize areas for restoration? And then I'm going to move into how do we engage with people? And I think that'll bring up the points raised by Kathy. So how do we prioritize? So that might go to John and Suzanne, really. Ladies first.
Yeah, I suppose from national parks and wildlife perspective, our prioritization is on, I suppose, implementing the EU Habitats Directive and EU and national law. So our priority is on focus initially on the restoration of our special areas of conservation, then our national designated sites or natural heritage areas. But like, I suppose I do recognise that there is a wider area of peatlands outside of this. And I think the work that's been undertaken by the likes of Bournemona on their enhanced rehabilitation restoration scheme will go on 33,000 hectares, will go a long way towards meeting, you know, some of our climate action objectives as well.
John Connolly, do you want to come in on that in terms of, you know, you mentioned some figures there, John, about, you know, 70% of our peatlands are blanket bogs, you know,
Yeah.
and we know that only 10% are remaining. Yeah, 337,000 hectares under forestry, 437,000 hectares under grassland. And you mentioned the Bournemona sites, Suzanne, but that's only a fraction of what John presented to us. So clearly, how are we going to address this? So,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I you know, it's quite a complex problem once you bring in land ownership and people, you know, and dealing with so many different groups. Like, even if you look at, you know, one mountain commonage, they might be owned by 4 or 5 farmers, or, you know, there really needs to be engagement with community. You know, so the grassland areas, they're obviously going to be farmland areas. There has to be an engagement with farmers on that. I think that the work that we're going to be doing in the Repeat project is going to start to address that. And I know there are other initiatives out there. You know, I think Farm Peat is one initiative that is going to be really, really useful. I think we're at the start of of what has to be a big sea change in terms of people's attitude towards peatlands. And, you know, it's got to do with education. So, you know, we got to get into schools. We got to educate the next generation coming up about the importance of these ecosystems. There has to be outreach to communities. I really believe that, you know, engagement with communities, you know, from the scientist point of view, we need to engage with communities right across Ireland. Like, it's quite a big challenge because you are dealing with that land ownership issue, and you know, it goes back to the common agricultural policy, government policy on how to incentivize landowners to improve peatlands rather than destroying them.
Well, I'm going to cut you off there, John, because I want to bring Dianna in, and just to flag, we will be hearing some excellent positive work that's going on with farmers, but you know, Dianna, you're looking from the global perspective, and you can see what's going on here in Ireland. We're only a drop in the ocean, and yet even at the scale we have. So how do you address this at the global level? How do you prioritize?
Well, I think that you have to take definitely different pronged approaches and work at all levels. I think at the moment, one of the biggest pushes for movement and change has been the real economic argument, the valuation, the true value of peatlands. And I think that there's not much work that's been done appropriately on that. UNEP is actually going to be launching at the COP in Glasgow a paper on peatlands economics. And I think that there's more need for work in this area, not only just by economists, but actually by ecologists, because we, you know, look at things in a different system lens and bring on, you know, the viewpoints of people. I think also these gatherings are just quite vital because of sharing of, you know, when you see something in a chat, someone asks a question, you get an immediate answer. It's quite phenomenal. And if you feel like you're connected up to people and you can trust each other to share what's the best, what's the latest. I think that that's really when we get the scale and speed we need. And that's really what we're talking about. So there have been the policy signals, and there then are some of the mechanics, like the Peatlands Code, for example. There are mechanisms being put in place, but I think also communities need to ask for the financing that they deserve to actually take the action to join up. And they also need to ask, what are my alternatives? Because I think through looking at a whole picture and placing those alternatives and innovations on the table, people will make a more informed whole view choice. So we are putting also the financing for nature gap, and really asking countries and people to, shift their purchasing power. Know where you're getting your food from. Make your choices that are informed for your climate and biodiversity future. And I think that if we work with private sector and people to raise that awareness in a positive way, then people can make the right choices, and governments can also shift. We've done a whole analysis of actually perverse subsidies that are really, counter global commitments and even national commitments for climate action. So I think that there needs to be both interdisciplinary research and collaboration, but also intersectoral decision making, and we can, that happens through people. So people on all layers are important.
Yeah, I just, really, that's, we talked about restoration for nature, and so what about restoration for archaeology? I mean, it's staggering, some of the things that Kathy brought up there in terms of the lost archaeology. So how, and I think that Trish in the Q&A, she's sort of phrased it better than I could. Any thoughts on how we balance the climate emergency and restoration for nature and all the wonderful things that, these natural systems do, with our need to preserve our archaeological record? So, let's try and put forward some solutions that we can build on after today.
Is that to me?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Or Ellen. Well, I suppose, really, like I said, the key thing is the state survey ceased almost over a decade ago, and peat extraction continued for another 10 years. So we actually have no idea what's out there. We really don't know what sites are preserved. We don't know how many archaeological sites are exposed and exist in, and I'm just talking about industrial peatlands. So we don't know what's out there. So, really, the key thing, the first thing to do would be to find out that, and then we develop a mitigation strategy. And will it be possible to save everything? No. It simply won't. And there's a massive, as you say, the balance between the climate emergency, and I think probably archaeologists would have to make hard decisions. But the fact is that we don't actually know what archaeological sites exist in those industrial bogs anymore. We're completely out of touch with that because there hasn't been a systematic survey for such a long time. Helen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, I know Malcolm Noonan mentioned Instar funding that's coming up. So maybe possibly some of that funding can go towards building up a database of what we have out there, what kind of sites we have, what kind of paleo-environmental information we have. So that might be something to look forward for the future. And then we need to get out maybe and do some more surveys of the bogs that are going to be re-wetted or restored to see exactly what remains. Because each year the milling has brought down a new level of sites or produced a new level of archaeological remains and destroyed the one that's above it. So.
And can I ask, have you been involved in the planning of the restoration for the Boland sites?
No. Well, the national, sorry, can I go and catch on this? The National Monument Service are undertaking a pilot project with Boland as part of that EDRA scheme, as far as I understand.
Okay, so I think we've highlighted some, things that need to be really worked on. So I think, Suzanne, you're probably the person to flag this through your own department, and also then from the archaeological perspective. But I see we have a minute to go, and just in the interest of sticking to time, I want to thank all our speakers. Absolutely fantastic. I am blown away by you know, all of the things that we heard this morning. And I know all this stuff. So it's going to be really interesting for our audience. I think a lot of these issues we will be raising tomorrow afternoon in our discussion with the panelists, but also we'll be highlighting these issues in relation to the extent of peatland, the scale of restoration works, the important archaeological reserve, and then the role that the Irish peatlands play, both from the global perspective, but also for communities. So we've only just begun, and we've only just begun today. And I really want to thank you, huge gratitude to everybody who spoke this morning. Thank you so much for your generosity. We're going to switch off metaphorically, and we're going to prepare for our next session. So please, audience, go get a cup of tea, a bucket of tea, have it beside you, bring in the kettle and put it beside you, the box of tea bags and all the rest of it. And so I'm going to close this session now at 10:30. We'll reconvene at 11. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.